I can consider that as an option. Obviously, people are people, and it doesn't matter if a person is 1 inch equals an equivalent of a 6 foot person, or whether it's a 10/12 of an inch is considered a normal 6 foot person. So I can mix and match HO and 00 figures, animals and what have you without too much of a discrepancy there. And again, I can force perspective. I can put 00 figures at the front, HO figures at the back. Thinking about it, it might be easier to put HO sitting passengers into a 00 train. It makes the train look filled up, but you don't have to chop their legs off quite so severely to get them into the passenger cars. But most of the other stuff, apart from the locomotives and rolling stock, I have to source those from the UK. But everything else I'm using, I can source from US suppliers. So it's not a total disaster. Plus, there is a guy who does a YouTube channel. His name's Larry Perquette. I believe he's the model railroad guy, or something like that is his channel. And he models both US and UK stuff on separate layouts. So he is obviously knowledgeable about where to get UK stuff when needed. Let's grab the ends there. It's not a lot. I don't want to waste it. Alrighty. So yeah, at the moment everything is assembling wood. Gonna need to dive down to Menards at some point and get some more wood, and probably need to get some more wood glue and screws. I'm doing both. Generally gluing and clamping, and then once the glue's set, I'll add some screws for strength. Now, fortunately, I mean, obviously, where you put a model railway is always a problem. You can stick it in a spare bedroom if you want, which kind of limits the size of what you're doing. You can put it in the attic, which is generally very risky. The problem with being in the attic is temperatures in the attic get sub-zero in the winter and 80 degrees plus in the summer. So it gives you a very narrow window for when it's comfortable for you to go up there and work, play and whatever. And also it's trying to gauge this. I probably should go the other way. And the rapid or the extremes of temperature can cause your tracks to buckle if you don't give them enough expansion room. It can cause excessive damage to especially wood structures. With a basement, your temperatures down there are pretty average all year round. Looking at the thermometer in our basement, no matter whether it's the height of summer or the depths of winter, the temperature is between 40 and 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And so with only a 10 degree spread, you're not likely to have warping issues in the wood and the metal. And so it's a nicer environment. Now obviously, because ours is a basement under the house, we have the water pipes all run under the house, not through the basement. There is the risk that leaks from the house could adversely affect the railway underneath it. But that's just a case of me not building stuff under water pipes. The other thing would be the air conditioning, which the only thing that runs down the middle of the house is the return vent, which is metal, and the rest of the vents are all running down each side of the house with a cross pipe at one end. So anyway, how are we doing here? I think obviously, since this is the other soybean field, once we finish this field, we'll get paid for both of them. Obviously, we know where field 3 is going to deliver, because we got credited for soybeans delivered from 3, although we harvested 4. The other advantage with 00 over O is obviously the price of stuff, and the price of stuff is getting quite scary. A locomotive will set you back $200, and generally what I'm doing is I'm buying locomotives without DCC control or sound, and then buying chips in the US, because I can do that, and it's actually cheaper to buy the chips here, and there tends to be more of them available at the moment. Supply chain issues in Europe have caused problems sourcing control chips for locomotives, and it's actually cheaper for me, as I said, not to buy a chipped locomotive from the UK and ship it out. It's cheaper for me to buy a locomotive from the UK and ship that, and then buy the chips in the US. But yeah, you're talking up to $200 for a locomotive. Passenger cars are $50 each. If you go to O scale, you're talking like $500 for a locomotive, equivalent size locomotive. And passenger cars are getting on for $150 a piece. So that can get very prohibitively expensive. And going down to end gauge doesn't save you much money from 00 or HO. The locomotives tend to be very, very slightly cheaper. The rolling stock tends to be very, very slightly cheaper. And while you can build twice as much sort of modelled area, I can build in 16 feet, so I honestly can't figure out 16 feet, 16 times 12, 160, 70, 180, 190, so that's about 190 inches, which modelled times 6 feet per inch is, call it 200, so 1,200, call it 1,000 feet. In N gauge, I could model 2,000 feet. So you get twice as much modelling area, but everything's smaller. So my eyesight has to be really good to be able to do the fine detail work that I might want to do on the model. O gauge obviously is very forgiving. 00 is somewhat forgiving. So, and I don't think I have the dexterity or the eyesight to model in N these days. Although it would be nice to model 2,000 feet of scalar model area scenics. Okay, that is one load. I can turn that off. Again, I think everything from this field should fit in that trailer. The difficulty with modelling 1930s is finding photos to give yourself inspiration. And obviously the fun thing there is all the photos are black and white. Okay, we're good there. And the cardinal for this is 90. Lift that up. 1, 2, and 3. And there we go. Oh yeah, store sales. Very, very funny today. So we've still got the little Antonio Carrera. We got this thing. Oh, that's an awesome trailer. I would love to have that. It's not something I need, but good grief, really nice price. And then probably my favourite flatbed trailer, because you can configure it for bales, animals, and wood. Or just leave it open flatbed and stick pallets on it. What price was that one again? That was 5,000. See, so much really nice stuff, which obviously if we were starting out on the farm, I would be looking at, yep, I'll take the Massey trailer, I'll take the Johnston flatbed. But we kind of got lucky with flatbeds and ended up picking the Roland, which Roland are really expensive. However, when you have it come in at a 50% discount, it makes it cheaper than the others. Not significantly cheaper, but hey, I got a Roland trailer for less than I could have got anything else. So not quibbling about that. 1930s is technically the sort of the golden age of steam in the UK. I'm modelling UK, not US at this point. I mean, railways were being built all through the 1800s, but you're talking very old, very temperamental equipment. And there isn't much there isn't much in the market of models that covers that particular era. You get on to the 1910s is probably your next sort of area, which is when the First World War happened. In the UK, the British government took over running the railways, and so it was all governmental trains running using the equipment of the component railroad companies. And I will use railroad and railway interchangeably, I'm sorry. Now, post-war, a lot of railroad companies were in really bad state because the government had basically run their equipment into the ground, and it was up to them to fix it. And so the government said, well, us running the railways worked really well. Maybe we should just take them over. And there were too many government officials who weren't particularly into nationalisation who said, yeah, we probably shouldn't take other people's properties. So instead they passed a law that said, okay, all the small railway companies will be dissolved and we will create 4 big railway companies. And so that's when you got these 4 railway companies who weren't generally competing with each other. There was little competition along the borders of each sort of allotted region, but in general the Southern Railway did the entirety of the south coast of England and had no competition down there. The Great Western did the Western Country and Wales, and so there was competition on the south coast in the Western Country because both the Southern Railway and Great Western could service the same towns. And so it went to, if you imagine the 4 railway companies each had a quadrant extending out of London. And that's when you got the likes of the Flying Scotsman and the Mallard, and the Steam World Speed Record was all going on in the 1930s. Technical innovation was at its peak for the railroads. And because you had 4 railroad companies all doing their own thing, different companies came up with different solutions for the same problem. And so the 1920s was the struggle post World War One. The 1930s was, the era of innovation, faster trains, and then 1939-40, the Second World War happened. Once again, the government took over the train companies. And while they returned post-World War II for 1945, 1946, 1947, the 4 railroad companies were back running their stuff. 1948 saw the British government say, you know what, we're just taking over the railways. So at that point, 1950s, 1960s is interesting because you still have steam, but you also have the early diesels coming in, and in some regions early electrics. But I kind of went 1930s because it's when the most locomotives are available to use, and the more luxurious rolling stock is available to use. Post-war, the Great Western built 3 locomotives, one of which was a modified version of a 1930s build, and 2 brand new locomotives, which were particularly populous. They didn't build many of them. So, I get 90% of the locomotives built in the 1930s. And with the Great Western, they actually went for a logo rather than just having the letters on the side of the trains saying the corporate the corporate name. They actually designed their own logo. So, going for that. And I think most people who, if you go to an exhibition in the UK, most layouts are either 1945 post-war or 1920s. Nobody really goes too deep into modelling the 1930s. And you do have motor vehicles, you have You still have obviously steam tractors and horse-drawn equipment, but you are starting to see limited road traffic, which makes things easier. A car looks more realistic than a plastic horse just standing. But, yeah. And obviously the other criteria I have is a lot of the ready-to-run locomotives that are currently being produced. The first locomotives were released in 1939, which is right on the tail end of the period I want to model. But quite frankly, okay, I can cope with that. And I can still model locomotives from the 1920s, 1910s, and them not be out of place. I mean, even some rolling stock that was developed in the late 1880s, 1890s, 1900s is still in use during the 1930s. It's not frontline use. So, 1910s, they had four-wheel passenger cars on their expresses. Those four-wheel passenger cars were relegated to feeder lines, departmental use, breakdown trains, and also even during the 1930s, miners' trains. The four-wheel passenger cars were relegated to miners' trains. I would have to make some painting amendments to model such, but again, it's an option I have. Whereas you get to the 1940s and you've just written off the availability of four-wheel passenger cars in use anywhere on the network outside of a departmental train. So something like a track repair train would have a four-wheel passenger car on it for the workers to travel in. Okay, we are nearly full again. So this is the second load. This is a bigger field. It might not all fit into that. Well, obviously it's a big field because we didn't do 100% shipping. No, we're halfway done. Yay. So being halfway done, that tipper will take 3 loads of the combine. 8, 16. Not quite 4 full loads. There is a possibility that we might get this field in. I don't think we will, though. But there you go. Rationale of why pick 1930s and not some other time. And I sometimes look at things and say, oh, there are some really nice diesel models coming out ready to run, and I look at them and say, oh, that's really nice, but I'm not going to buy one because it doesn't fit with my era choice. I did get myself a 1930s diesel rail car, and I got really lucky with that. It was one of the stores I don't usually look at when I'm sourcing material or sourcing stuff from England, but I happened to look in their bargain on their bargain page, and they had this diesel rail car at half price. I really can't pass that up. I'm not sure where I'm going to use it, but it's in the right era, and it's $80 rather than 160. So yes, I should buy this. So I did. Anyway, so I should probably check on the Massey Ferguson because, well, it's not doing anything. So if I'm lucky, it's finished rolling that field. If I'm unlucky, it's got stuck on a tree. Either way, I should get with it. So I think what we'll do is we'll run back, we'll finish off that strip there, and we'll go and check on what the Massey Ferguson is doing, and get back to our harvesting. So I should be able to clear both of these contracts in one shot. Should probably do a game save as well. So I'll do that on the next row. That missed, so probably shouldn't do it this way, but I just did. Oh, as one of the mods this week, reduces the volume of the reversing beep, which isn't too loud when you're in cab, but for some vehicles is piercingly loud when you jump out. So you can adjust that. I can't remember what else came up. There was the John Deere 6X20, 6X40 that was released on Friday. There was an Antonio Carrera tractor released today, which kind of surprised me. Well, might have released yesterday, I'm not sure, but when I checked it wasn't there yesterday at around about lunchtime, and it was there this morning. I sometimes check in the mornings on Saturday, see if there's anything new up. Sometimes Giants will drop an emergency patch to something that was uploaded on Friday, which, you know, that it doesn't work properly, so they just, I guess it's pretty much done. We're going to need to resolve the issues. And I think the Antonio Carrera tractor is a little bit wider, potentially, than most of the vineyard tractors we currently have. So more the sort of a New Holland T4 sort of mini tractor rather than an actual very narrow what is it? Vineyard tractor. So yeah, you can see these rear rollers really lift quite high off the ground, and the hydraulics are not very fast. So I can lower that. The rear roller's already rolling, the front two aren't. Okay. And did I miss planting along the edge here? That does look like a possibility. Okay. Well, that's me. Still. Now this tractor is struggling here. We're not getting any wheel slip, so I think the roller's about 100 horsepower requirement. We're only 125, but it's something that this tractor is